We'll do a review in Likutei Sichos and Chelek Chof Beis. This is the Sicha for Parshas Metzorah. It's a Rashi Sicha. It's a very detailed Rashi Sicha. It deals with the laws of bodily emissions and flows that come from the body and the tumah that they bring with them. And the Rebbe is going to explain a pasuk in the end of the Parshas Metzorah, which sums up the laws of the various different levels, the different types of tumah. And then we're also going to go back in the beginning of the parsha as the necessity, as the Rebbe explains it. So we'll keep one tab here on the Parshas Metzorah, and we will go from the portion of Metzorah, we'll go over to the piece of the Chumash, just for helping to keep the focus on what the Rebbe says over here in the Sikha. So let's start with Metzorah Aleph. So, noch die Parshiyas wegen the dinim, after the portions, this is in Metzorah, the last few Parshiyas deal from Zov. Zov, that's a man that sees an emission. And we'll see there is different levels. There is one emission, there is two, and there is three, as we will learn further. So we learn about a Zov. So, and then the Torah also, now the first time Zov, as the Parsha Zov, as Rashi explains over there, I'm giving already the Rashi's Pirush that Zov is talking about two or three. The difference between two and three, we'll have it all in the Sikha as well. If a Zov sees one time, then he's only Tomei for the day. At nighttime, he goes to the mikveh and he's Toher. He can go to the Beis Hamikdash, he can eat Truma. That's if he has just one sighting. If he sees twice, he has to go count 7 clean days after he stops seeing. He has to count 7 clean days before he can go to the mikveh. If he sees 3 times, then on top of that, he also has to bring a korban. He has to wait 7 days and bring a korban. Again, so one time, he's only tummy till the nighttime. 2 times, he has to count Shiva Nikiyim, 7 days. And 3 times, he also has to bring a korban. So we talk about the Zov. And then the Pasuk talk, Ish kiseitzi mimenu shikva zera. If a person has an emission of shikva zera, a nocturnal emission, but that would be also, it's different than Zov. It's not the same thing, but that also makes the person Tomei only till the evening. It's called also Keri, as we'll see. And then you have the laws of a nida during her menstrual period, a woman. Und zava, that's when there is beloy eis nidasa, when there is a flow that she sees blood, but it's not during the time of the nida. It's called a zava. In zava itself, there's a zava katana, zava gedola also makes a difference, but it doesn't impact our sikha, so we're not going to go through all the halachas here. So the Torah talks about, basically, we talk about a zav, and then it talks about ishki seitzim menu shikva zera. It talks about a nida, and talks about a zav. Is the Torah irum sayim b'soifa sedra? So the Torah concludes in the end of the sedra. So the Torah says there's 2 psukim over here at the end of the pasuk. Pasuk lamed beis, the pasuk says zois Torahs hazov. So it says this is the laws of the Zov. This is sort of the summation of everything we learned before. These are the Torahs of the law. And the Pashas you would translate, and also of one who Shikva Zera comes out over here from him, L'tomava, to become Tommy in it, which the Pasuk previously has talked about. As you see in the beginning of Perik Tezvov, the pasuk starts off talking about the dinim. Dabra bnei Yisrael v'amarta aleihem ish ish ki yeh zov mi b'soiroi zoivei tomehu. So over there it starts talking about a flow mi b'soroi. After the laws of the Torah tells us the tumosei b'zoivei, the dinim of azav, and after the Torah finishes with the zav, the Torah goes over to talk about isha sheyetzi mimenu shikvas zera. That's Pasuk Tezayin. And then the Torah further goes on to talk about the Nida, the Pasuk talks about. And then it says further, the Pasuk over here says, V'hazov v'zoive. So in our Pasuk over here, it becomes a little bit, so we have Zov, we have Shikva Zera over here, Tetzavah Shikva Zera, we have Anida, and then it says Zova Zeva Lazachal Anakeva. That would be the Zova, but over here the Torah once again puts in the Zov, Zova Zeva Lazachal Anakeva. Another time, so besides the Zova, the Zov. Okay, so let's go back. So we'll see how Rashi teaches this. So the Pasuk concludes in the end of Metzorah, Zois Toiras Hazov, Vashetetzim and Shikva Zera ends the Pasuk, Goimer. And then the next Pasuk is Vadova bin Nidoso, talks about the Tumas Nido, and Vazova Zoivel Zochel on the Cape. It's Rashi, the Mefarish, so this is how Rashi explains it. In the beginning is Zois Toiras Hazov, Zokt Rashi Bal Ria Achas. Here we're talking about the Zov Ria Achas. Now, as I said before, in the previous Pasuk, when it said the laws of Zov, right in the beginning, the very first Pasuk, when it talks about Zov Mipsoiro, over there, in Perik Tezvov, over there Rashi says clearly that we're talking about a Zov that saw once, and I mean a Zov twice or three times, not a Zov that saw once. So the laws of a Zov that saw once was B'chlal not mentioned in the Torah. There's no mention over there of the Zov that sees once. The Zov that the Pasuk talks about is two times and three times, and we'll talk about it a little bit more in the Sikha later on from the other Rashi. But I'm just trying to keep this organized. So what does Rashi explain? So Rashi says, Zois Toiras Hazov, that when the Pasuk says this is the law of the Zov, Balriya Achas. This talk, so now for the very first time, we're talking about a Zav who sees once, because before we were talking about two or three times. And here we're talking about the Zav that sees once. So but it doesn't say anything. Here's just a summation. And before we talked about seeing two or three times over there, we talked about waiting 7 days. And we also talked about bringing a korban, depending if it's 2 or 3 riyas. But we didn't talk about a zav that's a one. So, Mahu Teirosei, Zeis Teiros Hazov. What is the Torah of the zav of one time? So the pasuk continue. Rashi learns that the pasuk continue. V'asher teitze mimenu shikva zera, and one who comes out of him shikva zera. So we say that it has the same law. The same law. V'asher teitze mimenu shikva zera. Harehu, a zav that sees once is kibal keri. He has the same din as a balkeri, which is Tomei Tumas Erev, which becomes Tomei till the evening. That's the Limzov. And that's over here. Then the next pasuk pasuk further says, so Zois Teres Hazov Asher Teitze V'Nish Kuzer. Then the pasuk says V'Adova B'Nidoso. That's the nidos, and then it says V'Hazov as Zoivay. So Zov as Zoivay, that says is Bal Shtei Riyos uBal Sholish Riyos. Sheteiros Meforeshes L'Maylo. The rule of a Bal Shtei Riyos uBal Sholish Riyos we've learned already before, because as I said, this pasuk that it talks about Ishki Zov Mibsoire is exclusively talking about Shtayim or Sholish Riyos. By Shtayim you wait 7 days, because over there the pasuk talks about waiting for 7 days. And the Torah also talks about bringing a carbon. So the 7 days is for two only. No carbon is for 2 riyas, for 2 times as of seeing. And the 3, if he sees 3 times, he also brings a carbon on top of that. So, why does Rashi split this up? That the first Zov is talking about Riachas, and the second Zov is talking about 2 or 3 times, because there's a repetition of the pasuk over here. The Torah first says Zos Teres Hazov, and then it says Vazov Zoive. So it has to be 2 different things. Learn them before she explain. As Rashi Zechrech to learn it. Now, what forces Rashi to learn? Azois Teres Hazov meant that when it says that Nit the Teres Hazov wegen welche es retzich frieden Parsha, Zois Teres Hazov could mean this is the law that we just learned, the summation, as we said. This is the summation of the Teres Hazov, of the laws that we learned before. And before we only learned about a Zav of 2 or 3 years. So we're saying, no, this is not Teres Hazov. Rashi's Mechadish is Teres Hazov, a new Zav, a Zav of Bal Riachas. Nor Bal Riachas. How do you know it's Bal Riachas? We don't even know what the law of it. The pasuk here is telling you what is the Torah of the Zov. This Zov is Asheteitziv Menushich Vazara, that he has the same din. Umau Torah Asheteitziv Menushich Vazara. Is from them was the Torah Chazer Tiber Nochamol. So why does Rashi change the Torah Zov to be not the past, but because the Torah repeats it again? In the pasuk Shalach Rizeh, the next pasuk, it says Vazov Zoive, La Zochar V'Lanekeva. So what's the Zochar? Zochar. We're already talking about the Zochar. So basically, since the pasuk already says it's Teres Hazov, and then it says again Vazov Zoive, so Rashi learns there's 2 separate Zovs over here. The Rebbe learned Rashi as the Tzvei Psukim, that these 2 verses of Zois Teres Hazov und Hazov Zoivoi reden wegen 2 Sugim. They're talking about 2 separate things. Aleph, Zois Teres Hazov, the Zois Teres Hazov in the first pasuk red wegen Bal Riachas. It's all he saw only once. Und das was der pasuk teilt es euch von Zov Bechlau. Why do we make it in a separate pasuk, not one Zov separate this? Because they're separate halacha. Is vile. Bal Riachas hat another din. If you saw one has another halacha. Rashi says, from the Bal Riachas, what is his rule? What is the law? Harehu Kebal Keri. He has the same status as one who says, one like a Bal Keri, like Shech Vazera, that he's Tomei till Erev. And there's another pasuk, Vazov Ezov Beis, main Bal Shtedi is Bal Sholerish is Azov who saw 2 or 3 times. The rule for them is explained earlier. The Rebbe asks, this whole pshat is a very, very difficult, according to the pshat, to understand the pasuk like this. As the Rebbe is going to enumerate why it seems to be very difficult to say that this is Rashi's pshat base. And therefore, we need, however, understand der Pirush as the zwei Sugim and die zwei Psukim do. This interpretation that the two categories in the two Psukim, seine Balriya Achas ubal Shteiriyas ubal Sholisriyas, that they're 2 and 3, hat kama v'kama Schwerigkeit mit derech Pshat, has many difficulties in the way of Pshat. While the Rebbe is going to ask. The Rebbe is basically going to say, it would seem it would be a better Pshat to say that the first pasuk is talking about Shteiriyas. And the second Zov is talking about 3 riyas, rather than saying in Pshat that the first one is talking about the Riyachas. That has a problem. What is the problems? Aleph. Pavos shtei the Torah from Balriya Achas erst b'siyum hasedra. If we're talking about Balriya Achas, if it doesn't mean Balriya Achas, then the Torah doesn't talk. There's no such a thing about Balriya Achas. Balriya Achas would not be a Zov then. Only Shtayim or Sholosh. The Torah didn't say it before, and if the Torah wouldn't say it over here, there's no halacha. So now that you're saying that the Torah all of a sudden is talking about the Riya Achas, is farvoshte the Torah from Riya Achas erst b'siyum hasedra? How come the Torah just decided to put it down, the law of a one Riya at the end of the Sedra? Noch alle andere Sugim. After all categories, we went through all the categories before. Of the Rebbe enumerated, of a Zav, of a Shivazera, of a Nida, of a Zava. All of a sudden, the pasuk comes up with the Zav of a Riyachas. Noch al andere Suki. Und noch ein pasuk, and already the pasuk already said, "V'izartem es b'nei Yisrael mitumosum." There was a general instruction to separate the Yidden from their tumas goymer. So we already gave a general statement for all tumas, and now we mentioning Azov al Yachas. Unit freer by the dinim from Zov or Balkeri. How come it doesn't say earlier by the laws of Azov or Balkeri? Ubefrat, especially as is doch euch abal Yachas. It belongs together with the Zov because he is also of one siding. So the other one is just 2 and 3. Cannot be 2 riyas before it was sawn once. So the Torah should write first the law of seeing once. Like this, the Torah skips over, it doesn't talk. It talks about immediately 2, but the 2 had to see once before it became 2. Why didn't the Torah write it over there? So if the Torah wouldn't write it at all, if it doesn't mean here riyachas, then there's no law for riyachas. It only starts with 2, so it's not a problem why the Torah doesn't mention, because there's no rule over it. But now you're saying that this is a Zov is telling you riyachas. Why did the Torah decide to write this down just at the end of the parsha? Beis, another problem is lefizeh kumtuis as medarf mechalik zayin diverter zois Torahs litzdodi, that we have to split the words Zois Toiras, that the pasuk says. The pasuk ends up, this is the law. Zois Toiras Hazov. So we're splitting it up, the words. Zois Toiras Hazov is the summation of all the previous psukim that we learned. This is the Torah of the Zov. Or Zois Toiras Hazov, this following will be the Toiras Hazov. So we're splitting it up. With regards to Zov here, Zoister, this will be the Zov, because we haven't learned yet about a Zov Bal Riyacha. So we're saying this is going to tell you the law, that the law of a Zov is equal to Vasha Teitzim and Shechvazara. But later on, in Vazov Zoivai, over there it means Zoister that we already learned before. According to this, it turns out, as we got to split the word Zois Toiras and say that it has 2 different meanings. As it relates to the teaching of the Zov, meintes das folgende, it means what follows. Was kommt später, what comes later in Toiras Hazov, in the laws of the Zov. B'shaychus, because this will be, because we're telling you what is going to be the law of Azov Bal Riyachas. B'shaychus, zu V'adova b'nidos V'azov Azoivoi. Over there, it means what we already learned. Main Zois Teiras was Gizokta Frier. That we said before, Ham Foreshes Lamailo. That was explained before. It seems to be Shver. Number 3, the summary over here does not fit the order the way it was in the beginning, because pointed out the beginning it started off with the level of with the Zov. It started off in the beginning, and the Zov of 2-3 times it started before, and over here Zov Zoivoi comes in the second pasuk. Lifizei is the siyum. The Rebbe said number 3, the sachakel for the Friedike Parshas, the total, the summation of the previous Parshas, in ganzen nit leuten seder welche sie stehen, totally out of order, not in the order in the way they were written. Parsha Zov is gekommen, far ish kiseitze b'menu shichvas zara. That comes before kiseitze b'menu shichvas zara. In our pasuk, first we say v'asheteitze b'menu shichvas zara. That's in the first pasuk. And then we say V'hazov as Zoive. So we have Teitze B'Riship Hazara. But over there, Zov as Zoive 2 or 3 times, which the Pasuk says in Lamed Gimel, was stated before Asher Teitze Menushich Vazera. Var is the Nida and the laws of Nida. But over here, it says V'hadava B'Nidoso first, and then V'zov as Zoive. Und da steht V'hazov as Zoive. Was Leute Rashi meant this, the Zov was Terosman Fresh Lamail, according to Rashi, it means what it says before. Noch V'hadova B'Nidoso, it says after Dov B'Nidoso. So is out of order, isn't it? Move on. So, okay. So Rashi could have avoided all his problems. Hamai lernt Rashi was Pshutish al Mikra. How come Rashi, who is the simple meaning of the Pasuk, has the Tzvei Sugim, the 2 categories of the Psukim? Of the first one that mentions the Zov, Zois Teres Hazov, is one category. Second category, Vazov Azoive, is this one means, Teres Hazov means 1, Riyah, and Zov Azoive means 2 or 3 Riyahs. Why does he have to say that? Zayin Bal Riyachas, Bal Shtei Riyahs, Bal Sholish Riyahs. And he should have said, Azois Teres Gomer is Blois, Asachakel from Frier. He should have said, Zois Torah, this is a summation of before. We're not giving any new halachas. Und Zois Torah Hazov main Bal Shtei. The first one thinks Shtei. Und Vazov Azov is Bal Shtei, Bal Sholish. That means 2 and 3. And that's the 2 categories. Virasha Shefrir Gebracht. In Tchilas Parshas Zov, that there is the 2 and 3 riyas that we learned before. That what's the difference between seeing twice or 3? 2 will be for tuma, and this third one will require a korban. So then you're going to ask me, and we have a good answer also. Why does the Torah break up? So Zois Torah of 2. And why does the Torah write in the next Pasuk of 3? Why would that be? Why would that make sense? Because the laws of Zov Zoive, Lazochel Lekev are equal with the Shiva, with the korban. So that's why the Torah brings it in the second Pasuk. Main Vazov Zobashteri, Virasha Chifrir gebracht. Yeah. Und das was the Torah stellt am Prat von Zov Bal Sholish Riyas. Nit b'mekoymei. Why does it say out of place? Far vasha teitze menu goymer. As in the beginning, in the parsha over there, Asher teitze menu is stated after 2 and 3 riyas. Can we answer it. Das is weil nur die zwei haben dem din miyuchad. Because only these 2 have the special halacha, the level of zov. Was zählt sie ois von der alle andere sugim though. That separates them from all the other categories as they darfen have my korban. that they need an atonement. They need a korban lechaper of the tumas haziva to atone for the impurity of the ziva. And that's what answer. Everything would be pretty smooth according to this. So the Rebbe has a seemingly a much easier and would answer all the problems if we would have said that Zov, Zois Teres Hazov doesn't mean the Riachas, it means Sterius. All the parts will be in order, and we have a good explanation why Zov Hazov comes at the end. But maybe the Rebbe suggests, Rashi learns it out because there's a duplicate Lashon, it says Hazov Hazov. So 2 times the word Zov points to the fact that there is 2 types of Zov. Zov and Zoiv means 2 categories of Zov. As Rashi has already originally explained, let's go inside. Looks inside. Gimel. Maybe we could have answered as Rashi in Ardo der Kefel Haloshin, that what bothers Rashi here is the duplicate language. V'hazov ezoiv. It says nit vi in frir dikum posik. Unlike the previous posik, it says zois toiras hazov. But the Loshen Zov state blois einmal. Over there it just says once, Zov. And here it says Zov ezoiv. From them Rashi. And this is what tells Rashi as their posik is the meramis of zwei sugim in Zov. That the posik hits here 2 different categories in Zov because it says Zov ezoiv. 2 and 3. This will be al derech v'Rashi hat frier abgelernt dem Chile Kanal zwischen Balsterius. So previously, Rashi, when Rashi learns in the originally that it means to, so Rashi brings over here Umedroshe. This is in Posik Gimel. So Rashi uses the words in the Posik that the fact that in the Medrash says that in fact that in Posik Beis it says Zov, Zoive twice, and in Posik Gimel it says Zoive once, Zoive twice, and Zoive 3. So Rashi learns that these are Tomei 2 and 3. The Medrash Rashi brings down. And the Pasuk is talking about Riyas of 2 and Riyas of 3. And the difference is, as Rashi says, Medrash, Mona HaKosu Arishin, Riyas Shtayim, says 2 times. Shenemar Zov Mibsere Zove Tomehu. And the second pasuk, the pasuk Gimel, says Shnei Riyas. Pasuk HaKos Hasheni says Riyas Sholish, Koshnemet no Zoivei, Zoivech Zoivei. Okay, it's at Shtaim L'Tuma, Shlishis Masikos L'Korban. So the fact that it says more than once is something which Rashi deduces that it means more. So the Rebbe says maybe Rashi learned this difference between one who sees 2 sightings. One who sees 3 sightings. But I'm careful haloshin in the psukim from the fact that there is a duplicate language in these 2 verses. Dort mona hakosu harishain. Rashi says in the psukim dort, in the verses over there, there is duplicate language. As Rashi says, Mana kosu harishain riyashtayim. The Torah says 2 sightings in the first pasuk. Zov mibsoida zove, 2 times Zov. Mona kosu vasheni. Then in the second pasuk it says riyas sholish. There is 3 riyas. It says bezoivei 1. Ror besoida ror besoida ror besoida ror besorei azoivei 2. Aechtem besorei mezoivei 3. Ubibald as in die 2 psukim zusammen wird gesagt 3-mal Zov. So a combination in these 2 psukim together over here says 3 times Zois Teres Hazov, and Zov is Zoive, so it says 3 times Zov. The Rebbe learned Rashi, Zois Teres Hazov, main Balriya Achas. And therefore Rashi says Zois Teres Hazov means sing once, one-sided. Zov is Zoive, his Baal Shterius, Ubal Sholish Rius is 2 or 3 sides. Aber it's difficult to learn such. The duplicate language do is it's not such a strong question point of saying it b'derech hapshat. It's similar and even more. It's called behemshech to them kefel haloshen v'hadava b'nidoso. Right before it says v'hadava b'nidoso v'azov v'zoive. So the dava, the woman with the flow during Yenidas, the zov with the zoive. It's following the same loshen. And therefore, it is not really room to say Asuludem zol Rashi learn azavayt pirusha. Because of this issue, Rashi should learn such a far-fetched interpretation. Azog nadosis pshat, to say that this is the meaning in Zois Teres Hazov Asher Gerd. So that's not the reason. Noisef lozeh. In addition to this, afila oib mizol onemen. Even if we should accept as the kefil haloshim ba'azov ezoivoi is adiyu kederach hapshat. It is a good point, and it needs to be explained in pshat. But is obeder oifen halimud. But this conclusion, to conclude from the fact that there's a duplicate language, is problematic, and to this side that this means more sightings, as the kefil al-loshen is manamiziv tzvei sugim, that this duplicate language means 2 categories, nor a'inyan shel medrash. The conclusion, the answer for this problem is not something which is really bipshat. This is only medrash. Rashi zogt frier. Rashi actually says it before. Beim Chelek zwischen Shtei und Sholish with the 2 and 3 siding, was Meleren Tov Mona Hakos of Riyas Shtaim Riyas Sholish. So it said 2 sidings and 3 sidings. Ados is nit pshuta. Rashi says this is not the simple meaning, nor medrash. Rashi says very clearly that's the medrash. Or Rashi eich do gedacht matgish sein. So then Rashi, if Rashi wants to answer it and give this as the explanation, the source of his explanation, he should have said, as ein pirush is medrash, that the pirush is medrash. So the question is, why does Rashi learn that the first zov as zoivoi, zois teres hazov, that it means riya achas, which causes us all the problems, and not zois teres hazov? And even if it is a problem, because zov as zoive indicates that this is 2 and 3, and this is 1, Rashi should have said medrashi, because this seems like before it's medrashi. The Rebbe is going to explain, actually, even though Rashi says before Midrash, Rashi is not trying to say that it's not Pshat. That's part of the Pshat that we have to say so, as the Rebbe explains. And the Rebbe explains that when the Pasuk says Zois Toiras, the Torah, this is basically the Torah wants to include all categories, whatever it is in the Zav. And the Torah basically goes from the most lenient to the most stringent. So if we said Teitze Menashe Bazera V'Adova would be nice then, but the Torah sticks in Teres Hazov. Torah wants to give us all the laws of the flows. It doesn't work in the order. Let's see. The Loshen Zois Teres Hazov is al derech This is the laws of the oilers, the laws of the mincha, etc., which gives you everything that there is. Meant alle oiler minchas means all oilers, all minchas, alle sung, all categories. Learn the Rashi. So therefore Rashi says, as do, here is the Torah koilel. The Torah includes uvil mefaret zayin and wants to detail alle sugei zov be'ala seder. The Torah wants to talk about all categories of the zov and wants to go on the order min hakal el hachamor, from the light to the more stringent. And now we understand why all of a sudden, before the Torah divided up between zov and zova. First, we have the portion of zov, and then we have the portions of zova. But we want to, at the end, we want to talk about the most stringent cases. Apizevert far entfert. Now we understand was the Torah stellt vazov as zove la zochor. Why does it say la zochor in the next pasuk, in the last pasuk? La zochor v'lanani keva. And not in the beginning when we talk about Zov. Why, as Rabbi said in the Parsha, first it talks about Zov? Because Rashi wants to give in the order of from the light to more strict. Nit retzich wegen Zov frier. In Parsha, not where it talks about the Parsha Zov before, which is in the beginning. Nor mitval an akeva. Rashi puts together an akeva. Zov zusammen mit Zova. Rashi combines the Zov with the Zova. Weil sie haben beide themselves muchamer, because they have the both same stringency. That what? That you have to bring a korban. 7 days and you bring a korban. By the Zov and the Zova. But we still have a difficulty. Doch steht doch früher Teures Hazov. We do say Zov first. So yes, we have the Zov, Zachar, and the Keva later on. But the Pasuk says Zois Teres Hazov. And Farbasha Teitzi Bimenu Goimer. So because it says Va'asher B'toisves Vov, it's not Zois Teres Hazov for the Asher Teitzi Bimenu. So the Asher Teitzi Bimenu is not, but it says and one Teitzi was beweist as Hazov do is euch a prat in Klolus Hasuk von Zov. Zois Teres Hazov, and if Zois Teres Hazov did not mean an extra, then the next pasuk would not, the following words would not be Va'asher. If it doesn't mean its own category, if the Torah says Zois Teres Hazov, this is the Torah of all the Zov, and then it should say Asher Teitzim and Ashir Vazor min Akala Lakovet without the Vav, the Va'asher. The Va'asher tells you that the Zov is also a category, and Asher Teitzim. Was beweist as Zov do is euch a prat in Klolus Hasuk von Zov. That's also a detail in the general Zov. Therefore, if it's a Oishkumon, so it needs to, it comes out, Asido Azav welcher is kal b'dinoi from Vasher Teitze. That there is a Zav which is lighter in the halacha than one that Teitze mimeno. Bald as we can nicht sagen, as a Zov bald steht soll sein gleich. Since we cannot say that a Zov who sees twice should be equal, and Achas kam a kal from Vasher Teitze, and for sure we can't say it's going to be less than Asher Teitze, because Vasher Teitze has to wait 7 days. And Asher Teitze menu is only till the Erev. Muzman Zogun Azois Teres Hazev meint Balriya Acha. So we have to say Teres Hazev means one siding, and that's why that's the Kal. That's the easiest, and that's equal. It's not lighter than, but it's equal at least to Vasher Teitze Menashich Vazov. So the Rebbe still wants to explain why Rashi says that Zov Zoivoi means to two categories. We know that Zois Teres Hazov means one Riyah because it has to be Menakala Lakovet. So first comes the Zav Riyachas, who has the same law like Asher Teitzim Mimenu. But why does Rashi say Zov Zoivoi means two Riyahs, two categories, two and three? Hey, but therefore, we need to understand what Rashi sagt, Vazov Zoivoi Bal Shtei Riyos, Ubal Sholish Riyos. That says one who has two sightings and three sightings. Sheteirosu Meforeshes Lamailo, whose rules were articulated earlier. From Diuk Loshon Rashi, Rashi says Bal Shtei Riyos, Ubal Sholish Riyos. One who has two sightings and one has three sightings, which laws have been articulated before, is muchach. It's evident as Leute Rashi read the posuk v'azov v'zoive wegen zwei sugi zov, that zav ezoive is talking about two categories in zov. If Rashi wouldn't say the word baal, he would just say saw twice and three times, then it wouldn't put a separate category. But Rashi says Baal, and Baal means that the Zov Zoiva is two categories. It's not just flowing a flow two or three times, but there is a category of a Baal Shtediyus, a Baal Sholishiyus. Wegen zwei Sugizab. Isn't it? Move on. But it's not understood then. The Biur Hanal Siv Daled, what we explained earlier in Siv Daled, is Bloiz Ahechrech. We just proved with Azois Teres Hazov Red Wegen Balria Achas that Zois Teres Hazov is talking about one person has one side of Zov Zoive Wegen Azovas is Chomur. That talks about the Zov which is more stringent. From Vasha Teitzim Menu, that's more stringent than Teitzim Menu. Teitzim Menu Shichos. And the Dova Benidosa, because it comes after that. But from is that Hechrech from Pashtak Suvim Do, but what's the force? What's the proof? From the simple meaning here, as Vazov Zoive is Koilot Zwei Sugim. How do we know that it includes two categories? Bal Shtediyus Ubal Sholishiyus. Two sightings and three sightings. But maybe this is because we know already that there's two categories. So what is Rashi going to hide the fact? L'chayre can seemingly answer. Since Rashi already brought a medrash, as is eine Franz zwei sugi zav, that there is two categories in zav, shteiris and sholishrius. In the pasuk, it just says a korban over there. It doesn't say two or three. And Rashi is mechalik and brings down by medrash that there's two and three. So up to the Rebbe's explanation, the Rebbe will explain it now, but it seems like that this is all based on the medrash. If you read the pasuk without the medrash, then there's only, it doesn't say how many times, but there's no two categories, no two separate halachas of korban for three, and tumas shiva and the shiva nikim for two riyas. We don't have that without the. So one can argue. So since Rashi brought down on medrash, as is on the front sugis of, there is two categories in zov, because in the pasuk itself it doesn't say that, but shtei riyas and sholish riyas, there are two categories. Is a mefared donochem al ditzei sugim, so he just says again these two categories. Aber es ist nicht glattig loshon Rashi. But Rashi's language is not smooth. Rashi says sheteiroson meforeshes lamaylo. Why is Rashi saying that the rules are articulated above? If this is just a medrash and this is not befedish, why would Rashi say terosu meforeshes lamaylo? Rashi should have said it's mentioned in the Dreshes. As dinim was das main b'meila oich di chilukim shebeneim. Their laws and the differences amongst them. That for 2 sightings it's shivanekiyim, and for 3 sightings a korban is muforeshes l'mayla. This doesn't is strictly mod gedarf zogun. Rashi is teros nidreshes l'mayla. The Rashi allein zokt l'mayla. What does Rashi say over there? Rashi doesn't say that it's beferish. As the chilik zwischen shtei riyas v'sholish riyas, that this distinction between the 2 sightings and the 3 sightings is not pshuti for the psukim. That's not the simple meaning, nor medrashim. So why is Rashi saying meforesh l'mayla, not medrashim? The Rebbe is machadish iragvaldik chiddush that even though Rashi says medrashe, but in this case this is pshuta and this is meforesh l'mayla. This becomes the pshat. It is not really medrash. Vov is the beer in them. What's the explanation? Those was Rashi freer bringt medrashe. Rashi brings down earlier. Says medrashe. Umedroshe, monakos verishon ishtayim korotom. Umedroshe. Rashi sagt medroshe is just nicht wie in andere Erter. This is not. It's unlike other places. Like medroshe, in which the medrash is der pirush in posuk anders v'lei pshutei. According to the medrash, the meaning of the posuk is different than the simple meaning. Nor benitten the dan. In our case, is oich loit medrashe is the pirush in posuk v'lei pshutei. That the medrash is also the meaning of the pasuk is also that becomes the pshat. The medrash interpretation makes this the pshat. Medrashe gate be iker. So why we say medrashe? If is moisif noch an inyan was is merumas a pasuk. Medrashe means there's something else that we learn out from the pasuk. There's a drash from the pasuk, not a drash as opposed to pshat, but something to be expounded to. And on the other hand, is der drash nit nor miyashiv dem pshat. This drush is not only settles the pshat, nor muchrach loit pshutei. This is actually forced out. According to pshat, we have to say it. This is different from furish l'mayla. I have to say so. Val davke loiten drash b'loshen Rashi agodol liyashiv pshutei shemikra. Because it's davke according to this drush. And as Rashi used before, an agoda that sells the pshutei shemikra, Vert far entfer, this answers the arichas loshen ha-posik, was shver lo pshutei. This answers the lengthy language in the posik, which is difficult in the simple meaning. And this was going to answer it. So b'meila, this becomes the pshat. The pshat tells us that we have to say so. Frier stehen zwei psukim. So if you look in the pasuk before, when the pasuk starts somewhere, it starts talking. Ish ki yezov mibsoiroi. That's the act, the fact. What happens is there's a flow. Zove. What happens is tomehu. Then the pasuk starts talking about v'zois tia tumasei. What the laws are. What is the tumah? And then the pasuk goes back to tell you what happened here. This is again what happened. The flow either ran or it was thick, a different kind of the substance of the ziva, what comes out. But the pasuk already said zov mibsorei. This belongs. What kind of a zov mibsorei belongs over there, and then talks about the halachas. Ish ki zov mibsorei zoivei tomehu. If there's a flow from his flesh, then he is tummy, and then says v'zois tia tumosei. This is the tumah b'zoivei, and the tosik says ror b'sorei ezoi. If the basar runs the zoiv, or hechte b'sorei, or it seals, it's sick. B'zoivei tumosei, that's tumah. Und then noch is the pasuk shel achrize. And then after that, hoymon de prote, chon de prote dinu for tumas hazov, the specific laws of the tumah hazov kol hamishkov v'goymer. Later on, the Torah says, after that, kol hamishkov in pasuk dal. Is nicht verstandig. So not understood for was is the Torah mafsik zwischen. Bezo ist hier tumosu bezoivoi. This should be tumosu bezoivoi. Und die Dina hat tumah kol hamishkov mit the Werte ror besoire goymer hechtim sorry. Why is the Torah interrupt with these words saying again, Rab Soirechtim sorry? Was I nicht die dinim in Tumas Hazov? They are not laws of Tumas Hazov, nor Tzvei Fanim in Ziva. They're just describing the different two types of Ziva. Ror Besoire means Rir Sheyotzi Tzolu. That's a flow that comes out clear. Hechtim Besorei means Sheyotzi Ov, it comes out thick. Besoisim es Piyama. And it blocks the opening of the Amma. These words of Rabbi Chaim in the Friedrichen Pasuk. They should have stated in the previous Pasuk, Ish ki zov mi b'soiroi, tell you how the Zov Ror b'soiroi zov, hechtim b'soiroi mi zoivei tomehu. Tell you what happens, how the fact, and then then tell you this is going to be the Tumah Kol HaMishkav, what the laws of Tumah. If them kommt Medrash verantwortet, this Medrash comes and answers. Mona kosuv harishoin v'koritome, a kosuv hasheni v'koritome. The Torah splits it up. There is a kosuv rishoin and there's a kosuv sheni. That's what the Medrash that Rashi brings down here. The Torah is the Merames. The Torah is the mit Merames of zwei sugim in Zav. The Torah hints to two categories in Zav. Was there Tuma is nicht gleich, who have their Tuma is not the same. Und the Far stehen sie in zwei besondere Psukim. That's why they're in two separate Psukim. Hakosuv Harishain, Hakosuv Hasheni. There's the first, the second Pasuk. Und jeden von sei bazunder kori tomi, and each one separately calls it tomi. The Baal zer tuma is nicht gleich. It's not the same tuma. Wo seien die zwei Sugi Zov? What is the two categories of Zov? Und wo ist der Chilik b'nei merumas in Pasuk? And where is the hint, the difference hinted in the Pasuk? Zogt Rashi, so Rashi says, as jeder Zoiv was where the mountain Pasuk, that every time there's Zoiv mentioned the Pasuk is Maramis of Nochariya, and that hints of another sighting. V'meila, read der Kosuv Harisha in the first Pasuk is talking about wegen einem was hat gesehen der Stein, that one who saw two sightings. And Kosuv Hashem in the second Pasuk wegen einem was hat gesehen der Sholish saw three sightings. Kommt ois, so it turns out, as Pshuta shall mikra dorten, that the simple meaning of the pshat there is machriach, forces us on the darv darshan and the mutar aloshan that we need to expound this extra language, because otherwise it doesn't make sense the flow of the psukim there. There's two categories in Zov. Bal shtei bal sholish, two or three sightings must be. The conclusion that there's two separate halachas. The halacha follows if there's two separate categories, there must be different halachas. Zayin. About as the medrash beniden dedan, since the medrash in our case is azavos is muchrach mitzad pshute canal is something which is forced out in the literals from the simple meaning canal is verstandig. It's understood as euch der chilik in din zwischen sei. Was Rashi brings. So to understand that also the difference of the halacha that Rashi brings, that shtaim letuma vashlishis as kikosi lekorban, that if there's only two sightings, he only becomes tamei and it needs shiva nikim, and the shlishis requires him a korban, is nit blois hatokas loshon chazal. It's not just quoting and bringing down what the Chazal say, Belchasi is nit hepech hapshat. It's not just that it doesn't contradict pshat, nor says muchrach in pshute shal mikra. But we have to say this in the pshat of the pasuk. How do we see this in the pasuk? The difference. Vabir. Explanation. If you bald as vizois tia tu mosei, batzitzich bepashtus zu dem tomeihu. Von dem, was steht in früheren Pasuk, bei Balstel Riyos. So when the Pasuk says, Bezois tia tu mosoi bezoive, this goes behemshech to Zov Zoive Balstel Riyos. Pasuk says, Bezois tia tu mosoi. That it goes, and was steht in früheren Pasuk, bei Balstel Riyos, darf man sagen, as the Dine Tuma Vachestein behemshech ha-parsha, seinen durch by Balsterius. We have to say that they apply also to the Balsterius. So whatever is going to follow in the Parsha should apply to there. Muzman b'meila zogun. So if I have to say, so what's the difference between 2 and 3? As the Hisofa from Balshal Sholish Rius of Balsterius, that what is the addition of 2 sightings over 3 sightings is nit in them etzem inyan fun it's not just in the being tome that he's tome, nor in them was shtayim lituma vashlish is maske kosi likorban. That 2 is for tuma tomehu. No, is not, but shlish is maske likorban. The extra is a korban. Nit mechai was a korban. So within the idea of tuma, it's like no difference. Tuma v'zois tumase. Tuma is the same. 2, but there is a new thing. Maskikose, there is a new requirement. Nit mechai vose korban. And that's it. It's a need. It's a necessity. In a nayer zayt gesagt something new. So v'zois tuma flows because for the laws of tuma, shiva that you need the shiva nikim goes with the pasuk that the pasuk says by both, and there's an extra maski kose for a korban. Now we understand what Rashi then said that Bal Shtei Reish, Bal Sholish Reish, Shetarason Muforeshes Lamaylo. Those 2 and 3 Riyas who is articulated. Bal Der Chile Kanal Tzvisha Shtei Reish or Sholish Reish. The difference between 2 and 3 is Muchrach Oich Mitzad Pshutei. This is also forced out in the literal sense. Kenal Barucha. Ubemela as Rashi will uptouchen. Therefore, Rashi wants to translate Velcher Zov is Terosim Foreshes Lamaylo, which Zov's Torah is explained above. Nit v'balriya achas v'steroshe shteit esh b'sim hasidra, not like riachas, which says at the end of this parsha. Rashi wants to say what's explained before. Rashi brings the beide sugim in Zav. He brings both categories in Zav. And the Rebbe will continue now to bring out Yonam Ufloim in Halacha from Rashi's language over here.